The honeymoon phase is now over. The Switch 2 has been out long enough for the initial dust to settle, and the library is absolutely stacking up. But let's be real, your time is valuable, your budget isn't infinite, and you shouldn't be wasting either on mediocre ports or half-baked tech demos. You want the definitive experiences, the games that actually justify the upgrade and prove what this hardware can do when pushed to its limits. Today we are cutting through the fluff, and these are 10 games you should be playing right now.
Cold rain seeps to my soul.
When Capcom first lifted the veil on the 9th mainline entry in this legendary franchise, fans were wondering exactly how the studio would top Village. Well, they did it by smashing two completely different eras of the series together, selling a staggering 7 million copies in just 2 months. It is dark, it is relentlessly tense, and seeing how this absolute powerhouse of a survival horror game translates to a physical Switch 2 cartridge is nothing short of fascinating. The big mechanical hook in Requiem is its split campaign, alternating between two entirely different protagonists and gameplay styles. First up, you have FBI intelligence analyst Grace Ashcroft, who is investigating a string of bizarre deaths tied back to the lingering trauma of Raccoon City. Her chapters are classic slow-burn survival horror. Played entirely in a claustrophobic first-person perspective, Grace has microscopic inventory space, barely any ammo, and is constantly being stalked by an invincible, terrifying entity known simply as the Girl. To survive her sections, you aren't blasting your way out, you're sneaking under tables, conserving your lighter fluid, and hunting down rare ink ribbons to manually save your game at old-school typewriters. It is pure, stressful Resident Evil 7 energy, and it is brilliant. But then, the game completely shifts gears when you take control of returning favorite Leon S. Kennedy, investigating the same derelict Midwestern locales from a third person over the shoulder perspective. Leon's sections are a beautiful, action-packed love letter to the Resident Evil 4 remake. Leon is older, more cynical, and armed to the absolute teeth with customizable weaponry and his trusty melee combat skills. You're parrying enemy strikes, managing a massive arsenal, and actively pulling off crowd control maneuvers against massive waves of bioweapons. The way Capcom seamlessly weaves these two drastically distinct tonal styles together without breaking the pacing of the overall story is a masterclass in game design. It stops the action from burning you out and stops the horror from completely paralyzing you.
He often wonders about destiny, and if there's something that only he alone
Square
can do.
Enix first dropped this massive RPG on the original PlayStation. It was infamous for being an absolute monster of a game, easily pushing well over 100 hours of old school, slow burn grid grinding. But the team at Hexadrive decided to reconstruct it from the ground up, and the result is a critical and commercial powerhouse. Right away, the most striking change is the presentation. Instead of chasing photorealism, Reimagined handles Akira Toriyama's legendary character designs with a stunning puppet and diorama aesthetic built on Unreal Engine 4. It looks like a living, handcrafted toy box, returning the character proportions to the grand scale of the original PlayStation release. But Hexadrive didn't just give this a gorgeous facelift, they completely re-engineered the mechanics. The original game's infamous pacing has been completely streamlined, cutting out bloated filler segments and trimming the main campaign down to a far more approachable 45 hours. The turn-based combat is faster and deeper than ever. Thanks to the brilliant new moonlighting feature, your characters can now equip 2 vocations simultaneously, allowing you to mix and match abilities to create incredibly broken, satisfying combos. Plus, they added flashy limit break style let loose super moves unique to each class combination, and introduced overworld field slashes so you can cut down weaker monsters without ever transitioning into a loading screen. It keeps the classic tactical soul intact while completely eliminating the old school friction. The writing remains incredibly poignant, but it's elevated immensely by spectacular new voice acting, featuring standout performances that inject an incredible amount of charm and emotion into characters like Maribel and Kiefer. It's a bittersweet, deeply memorable journey about uncovering the hidden history of a forgotten world, one stone fragment at a time. For years, the story's subseries was Capcom's bright, colorful, slightly goofy Saturday morning cartoon counterweight to the gritty, heavy-hitting mainline games, but Twisted Reflection completely flips the script. It traded the kid-friendly tone for a mature political narrative about warring nations, environmental collapse, and extinct twin Rathalos. It's an absolute critical darling, and playing it on the Switch 2 feels like the exact moment this spin-off series finally grew up. If you're new to stories, the core gameplay is basically Pokemon meets traditional Monster Hunter. You aren't just hacking away at monsters, you're stealing eggs from dens, hatching them into monsties, and fighting alongside them, but Twisted Reflection completely overhauls the depth. The classic rock, paper, scissors turn-based combat returns, but it's been vastly expanded. Capcom finally added the fan-favorite longsword to your rider's arsenal, complete with its own dedicated soul gauge mechanic for counterattacks. They also separated your kinship gauge from your stamina. That means you can finally experiment with heavy weapon skills without constantly draining the gauge you need to pull off your massive, cinematic ultimate attacks. It's strategic, it's fast-paced, and it completely removes the repetitive grind of the older games. But the biggest jaw-dropper here is the world design. Built on Capcom's RE engine, the game drops you into massive, vibrant, semi-open zones that feel closer to Xenoblade than the tiny segmented maps of the past. And because you start the game as an established adult ranger captain with a fully grown Rathalos, you can take to the skies and fly across the map almost immediately. What really ties the whole game together, though, is the brand new habitat restoration system. Instead of just hoarding duplicate monsters in a digital box, you're encouraged to release caught monsties back into the wild to repopulate areas devastated by the story's environmental disasters.
Jace is mine!
For 6 long years, this was Capcom's ultimate Ghost game. Announced all the way back at the PS5 reveal, it went through multiple delays, complete radio silence, and left everyone wondering if it was trapped in development hell forever. Well, it finally launched. It's pulling crazy numbers on the physical charts, and against all odds, Capcom actually pulled off an absolute sci-fi banger. So what actually is this game now that we have it in our hands? PRAGMATA is a third-person sci-fi action-adventure where you play as Hugh Williams, a systems engineer stranded on a massive lunar research facility called the Cradle. The twist, the entire place has been hijacked by a rogue AI named Idis, and your only companion is a mysterious android girl named Diana. The core gameplay is this incredibly satisfying hybrid of tight shooting, unique hacking mechanics, and protecting Diana. But it's not just a tedious escort mission. Diana actually acts as your live wire support system. She can purge corrupted data filaments from the environment and stun hostile mechs. It gives the combat this distinct tactile rhythm where you're juggling heavy artillery while managing your position to keep both of you alive. It's half high-stakes mech shooter, half cyberpunk dad simulator, and it completely works. Visually, PRAGMATA is doing something brilliant. Capcom used the RE engine to create environments that are intentionally designed to look like slightly broken generative AI slop. You'll walk into areas where buses are sprouting out of walls or geometry is melting, giving the whole lunar base this deeply unsettling, uncanny valley vibe.
And what led you here, Dr. Jones?
When Machine Games first dropped Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on PS5, Xbox, and PC, it was a massive graphical powerhouse. Ray tracing, massive open zones, heavy physics, it felt like the kind of next-gen heavy lifter that would give Nintendo hardware a collective panic attack. Yet here we are, staring at a Switch 2 cartridge, and it is kind of a technical miracle. Look, let's get the technical wizardry out of the way first, because Digital Foundry is going to have a field day with this one. To get this running, they had to lock the frame rate to 30 frames per second. Yes, the 60 FPS smoothness of the other consoles is gone, but honestly, it holds that 30 remarkably well outside of a slight hitch whenever the game autosaves. And you know what? The slower, more methodical pace of the Great Circle actually makes it a perfect fit for a handheld. This isn't a relentless, twitchy first-person shooter like Wolfenstein, it's an adventure game. You're spending a huge chunk of your time pulling out a camera to photograph clues, opening up Indy's journal to decipher ancient symbols, and solving genuinely clever environment puzzles, because the gameplay is heavily focused on stealth, exploration, and introduced to the loving embrace of a sledgehammer melee combat. The 30 FPS target doesn't hurt the experience at all. Creeping through Mussolini's fascist outposts or exploring the snowy peaks of the Himalayas feels just as immersive when you're sitting on a couch or riding a train.
Welcome to the trap!
When Fumi Games first showed this off, the internet kind of collectively lost its mind based on the visuals alone. It looked like someone took a vintage Steamboat Willie-era cartoon, drenched it in gritty noir film grain, and dropped a modern boomer shooter right into the middle of it. But now that it's finally out, it's proving to be one of the biggest surprise breakout hits of the year, and playing it on the Switch 2 is a wild, jazz-fueled trip. You play as Jack Pepper, a gritty, cynical private investigator voiced by the legendary Troy Baker, trying to clean up the corruption, kidnapping, and mob violence plaguing the seedy underbelly of Mouseburg. And behind that beautiful, hand-drawn aesthetic is a surprisingly deep, mechanical first-person shooter. This isn't a slow, tactical detective game. It is a fast-paced, high-mobility shooter where constant movement is key. The arsenal you get is hilarious but lethal, ranging from classic crackling machine guns to explosive cartoon power-ups. Enemies don't just drop. They react with brilliant frame-by-frame slapstick death animations when you land a headshot. Fumi Games promised this wouldn't just be a cool art project, and they absolutely delivered. The gunplay is tight, punchy, and genuinely challenging, but what really gives Mouse its identity is the tone. The developers managed to strike this bizarre, brilliant balance between dark, brooding detective tropes and ridiculous, over-the-top cartoon logic. Jack Pepper behaves like a classic hard-boiled cinema detective, but the world around him is stuffed to the brim with cheesy dialogue and intentional laugh-out-loud animal puns. It keeps the game from ever feeling too bleak, even when you're unraveling a massive corporate conspiracy. Investigating the lively levels, finding hidden secret rooms, and piecing together the mystery on your literal crime wall gives the campaign a great sense of pacing between the chaotic gunfights.
Here, on this small island floating in the sea.
For over a decade, fans have been begging Nintendo to bring back their weirdest, most unhinged life simulator. Well, it finally happened. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream dropped on the Switch, and it is a massive breakout hit, moving nearly 4 million physical and digital copies in its first 2 weeks alone. If you thought the 3DS original was surreal, playing this expanded sequel on the Switch 2 is like watching a soap opera written by a chaotic AI. At its core, Living the Dream keeps the brilliant, hands-off charm of the original. You build up a remote island community by filling it with Mies, whether that's your actual friends, random celebrities, or fictional characters. You don't directly control them. Instead, you're a benevolent deity feeding them, dressing them up, and managing their bizarre social lives. But the gameplay upgrades here are huge. Mies aren't just trapped in an apartment complex anymore. They actually go outside, stroll around the beach, and interact naturally, and Nintendo added incredible new layers like little quirks, family dynamics, and relationship parameters that make their behavior way more personalized. It feels less like a sterile menu simulation and more like a lively digital dollhouse that rewards your creativity. What makes Living the Dream truly special, though, is how it handles relationship drama. Nintendo listened to years of fan feedback and introduced elevated inclusivity, fully supporting same-sex relationships and diverse dating preferences from the jump. Watching the dynamic relationships unfold is endlessly entertaining. The writing is incredibly witty, packed with regional slang, petty fights, and bizarrely touching milestones. You can even assign real-life relationship statuses, deciding exactly how your Mias address their best friends or romantic partners. It strikes this perfect, bittersweet balance of reality TV drama that genuinely makes you laugh out loud.
Beach party. It's the tits, it's the jam, everyone's gonna be there.
If you've been paying attention to Annapurna Interactive and the team at Beethoven Dinosaur, the absolute geniuses behind The Artful Escape, then you already know Mixtape has been high on our radar. At its core, Mixtape is an episodic adventure about 3 high school friends on their graduation night embarking on one last road trip together. But the hook here is how the story is told. As they drive, they play a mixtape, and every single track triggers a playable flashback. And when I say playable, I mean the gameplay completely morphs to match the vibe of the song. 1 minute you're skateboarding through a hyper-stylized suburban neighborhood, the next you're engaging in chaotic, joyful backyard shenanigans or floating through a surreal teenage daydream. It rejects having one set genre, choosing instead to be a playable playlist of youth, rebellion, and growing up. It's inventive, it's fast-paced, and it keeps you guessing what kind of gameplay mechanic is coming next. Now, Beethoven Dinosaur are known for their jaw-dropping visuals, and Mixtape is no exception. It features this gorgeous stop-motion adjacent animation style mixed with brilliant, saturated colors. On the Switch 2, this art direction shines incredibly bright. Because it's not chasing photorealism, the hardware can absolutely max out the post-processing effects, the depth of field, and the vibrant lighting, locking in a flawless performance whether you're playing it docked or on the go. And honestly, this is a game meant to be played with a pair of high-quality headphones on.
Build a new town.
If you had told me a year ago that a cozy sandbox spin-off co-developed by Game Freak and Omega Force would become one of the highest-rated Pokemon games in modern history, sitting with a massive 90 on Metacritic, I'd have thought you were inhaling coughing gas, but it dropped, it shifted 4 million units almost instantly, and honestly, it is the most refreshing, genuinely addictive spin-off Nintendo has given us in generations. So what's the setup here? You play as a lone Ditto stranded in an abandoned Kanto region that has been left completely uninhabitable for traditional Pokemon. After stumbling upon your old trainer's Pokedex, you use your transformation abilities to take on a human form, partner up with a very scholarly Tangrowth, and set out to build a sustainable paradise to bring the Pokemon population back. The gameplay is this brilliant, incredibly satisfying mix of Animal Crossing, Minecraft, and Viva Pinata. You aren't catching monsters and balls, you're building specific habitats to attract them. Want to find a Hoot-Hoot? You need to build a shaded nighttime canopy biome. Want a Squirtle to move in? You need to irrigate a fresh water pool. It completely gamifies the environment in a way that rewards your inner designer, featuring 300 different Pokemon to attract across multiple generation eras. But the neatest mechanical hook is how you interact with the world, because you're a Ditto. You don't just use standard tools. Instead, when you befriend a new Pokemon, they teach you how to mirror their abilities. Meeting a Scyther lets you mimic its blades to clear debris, befriending a Geodude lets you smash iron ore. What really pushes Pokopia over the edge from a great single-player diversion into a certified masterpiece, though, is the multiplayer integration. The game supports up to 4 players in seamless drop-in, drop-out co-op. You can hop directly onto a friend's island to help them terraform massive cliffs, share rare crafting recipes, or just hang out and play adorable built-in minigames like Bulbasaur's jump rope. Managing an ecosystem together, dividing up tasks like foraging and landscaping, and watching your collective village grow gives it this incredibly warm communal energy that perfectly captures the pure nostalgic soul of the franchise.
6 attractions can be played this way.
When
Whether
Wonder
you're
first
teaming up
launched a few years back, it was universally praised as a 2D platforming masterpiece, bursting with pure, unfiltered creativity. Nintendo decided to revisit the Flower Kingdom on their new Switch 2, giving it a massive, dedicated physical release, packed with actual mechanical upgrades and an expansion pack's worth of new content. It's a fascinating look at how Nintendo is treating its premium next-gen ports. Let's start with the immediate technical glow-up, because running on the Switch 2, this game is absolutely pristine. The original Wonder already looked great, but it was pushing the baseline hardware to its absolute limit. On the Switch 2, the resolution ceiling has been shattered docked on your TV. The game now renders at a native 4K resolution. Because it's a beautifully styled 2D side-scroller, the jump to 4K means there is zero aliasing, every mustache hair, stitched fabric detail, and background layer is razor sharp. And if you're taking it on the go, handheld mode now locks at a clean native 1080p presentation. The smooth 60 frames per second performance never dips for a single microsecond, making it one of the absolute cleanest, most visually striking platformers you can buy right now. But Nintendo didn't just slider up the resolution and call it a day. They actually addressed the biggest complaint people had with the base game: the lack of challenging single-player content and repetitive Bowser Jr. boss fights. This edition packs in over 70 brand new Toad Brigade training courses. These are bite-sized, incredibly tight challenge rooms that test your mastery of the game's badge system, asking you to speedrun, avoid damage, or maximize power-ups under strict conditions. On top of that, all 7 Koopalings have been officially added back into the mix. Each one shacks up in a new sector of the map, and thanks to the reality-bending power of Wonder Seeds, these fights are completely unhinged. You aren't just jumping on their heads 3 times, you're dodging, screen-filling, gravity-shifting chaos that makes them some of the best boss encounters in modern 2D Mario history. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out one of the videos on screen right now. As always, I'm Cyril, big thanks to the community, and I'll see you on the next video.